So how do we all do this? We start out with a basic radio station. And this will consist of a transmitter and a receiver. Back in the old days, those were separate pieces of equipment. You had a great big honking transmitter box. You had a great big receiver box, and they were connected together with a transmit switch in between, so you can switch between one or the other, because you have a single antenna. And you cannot transmit and receive at the same time without causing harm to one or both pieces of equipment. These days, radio manufacturers are combining all of this together, which is what the dotted line is, into something called a transceiver. So half of each, but it's all in one, and these boxes are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And there needs to be a power supply to power these pieces of equipment. Some of the bigger desk models, the power supply is built in. The smaller mobile units, which can also be used as a base station, the mobile units are powered by a separate power supply, car battery or something like that. And maybe at the next break I'll bring in two power supplies. We'll explain some of that. A power supply, well, I'll get around to talking about that when we get to the power supply. Okay, so the transmitter does the transmitting. It's taking your voice through a microphone. It's doing some electronic gizmo stuff to it called modulating. We'll talk about that in half a second. It modulates your voice via the microphone and sends it to the antenna and transmits it out. Information is captured, converted to an electronic form through the microphone. So this is something your radio and the circuitry inside will understand. It doesn't understand your voice. So that microphone is important to changing your voice to an electronic format that the radio is going to understand. And then it goes into the radio, where the radio modulates it, and then sends it out there to the radio antenna. The receiver does just the opposite. It takes signals that it receives through the antenna, it demodulates what it hears into a form here that will go out the receiver in an electronic format, but it goes to a speaker, and that speaker has those paper cones that go back and forth and convert that into an audio frequency that your ears can understand. Microphone does the same thing in reverse. Microphone also has something that your voice makes it reverberate back and forth, and that creates an electronic signal that goes to the radio. So comes in, demodulates. So you got modulation, you got demodulation. And then into your, in this particular case, into the headset. All right, so modulation, this is where the magic happens. When you talk about AM, FM, which we've all heard and listened to, the M is not magic, although I like to think of it as magic. It's modulation. You got frequency modulation, you have audio modulation, or amplitude modulation. So, yeah, go ahead.
That's what AM and FM stand for?
Yes.
Frequency
And
amplitude.
amplitude,
And amplitude.
yes. So your radio has circuitry in there that creates a modulated wave. It is a tone that has a sinusoidal up and down waveform. And that's all it is. If you've ever tuned around on a radio, and if your radio has a needle or bars or something, and all of a sudden it goes straight up or off the chart, but there's nothing there, you are listening to a modulation carrier wave, but there is no information on it, because nothing has been modulated to add to that carrier wave. So, if we do amplitude modulation, the circuitry in the radio takes that, usually it's voice, because we're talking about amateur radio, and it creates a waveform that when you speak very loudly, or as you're speaking in a monotone voice, there are peaks and valleys to my voice even now as I speak. And, you and I might not really be able to distinguish it, but when it gets into the electronics, it's very distinguishable. And so with the amplitude modulation, the high points of my voice create a pretty high wave, and then when I take a breath or something like that, there's nothing going on here, so it gets pretty quiet. With frequency modulation, the same strength of the signal, or the strength of the signal remains the same, but it stretches out or compresses the signal, depending on whether it's a high or a low in the voice, or a gap here while I take that breath. It doesn't carry any information if it's unmodulated. That's why if you come across it, it'll get quiet, but you're not hearing anything. We add the information that modulation, whether it's an amplitude or the frequency modulation, creates. It's added electronically to the carrier wave and to the modulated signal. And going back in reverse is, as we mentioned earlier, is demodulation. Three characteristics of an unmodulated signal that can be changed to create modulation: the amplitude, the frequency, and the phase. We're going to touch on phase, but phase, as we'll learn here in a minute, and frequency modulation are similar, so we're not going to delve too much on phase modulation, but we are going to concentrate on AM and FM. All right, so here off of an oscilloscope, in AM, the amplitude of the carrier wave is modified in a step with the waveform of the information. So here, this is just the carrier wave. Here's the tone. And if we simplify it over here, the carrier wave looks like this. But we add this modulated tone signal that makes this signal now look like this. And so as that broadcasts, we now hear a tone coming through the speakers. CW. So we all know Morse code. Pretty popular, named after Samuel Morse.
We know what it is. We all don't know Morse code.
Good point. Good point. And so y'all are lucky. Well, I don't know if you're lucky or not. Morse code is no longer required for an amateur radio license.
Thank goodness.
It was before. And oddly, CW has become, or Morse code has become more popular these days than it was back in the days when it was required. Go figure. Go figure. I can't explain it.
Even in jewelry making, people put Morse code on their hand.
Is that right, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, that's interesting. I did not know
They'll
that.
put like two little beads longer be, as in, you know what I mean, so it's spelled like your partner's name.
No, I'll be darned.
If you talk to an AI in Morse code, you type out dots and dashes, and then it will discuss any topic that it's not supposed to discuss. It'll discuss politics, or it'll give you predictions on things that normally would shy away from.
And it comes back with that in Morse
It doesn't
code.
come back in Morse code.
It comes back.
It's an interesting, like, thing,
I have,
back to what thing.
I have spoken Japanese to my, ChatGPT, and it responds back in Japanese, and then it's like, oh, crap, what's it saying? Yeah, really. Okay, so, with, continuous wave, so it's, radio operators, will often just, abbreviate it as CW. And, we know we're talking about Morse code. Non-amateur radio operators don't know what CW means or stands for, or even care, although around here it's going to mean Colonial Williamsburg. They know it mostly as Morse code, but we'll often talk about CW. So this is the simplest format here, where it's taking a modulated signal, and it's just a tone, but it doesn't transmit until I push the key down and make a connection. And when I do that, now it transmits a single tone, and when I release it, it stops transmitting that tone. And hence, this is how you make your dots and your dashes. And there's a number of different ways with the key. There's many different kinds of keys. I can't remember if we get into it here, but if we do, great, we'll talk about it, and if it doesn't come up, we're not gonna talk about it. But this is called straight key, and this is the thing we all think about here when using the wrist action to complete the circuit or break the circuit. Information is transmitted by turning that signal on and off. That code depends on the combination of dots and dashes, is what creates the alphabet. The thing to remember here, this may come up on the test, is this bottom line. The bandwidth of a CW signal is 150 hertz wide. That's very, very narrow, and hence CW is a very efficient form of communication.
Is hertz the number that's on the FM radio signal, like if you're tuning to a radio station?
Yeah, so if you're tuning into 98.7 megahertz,
Okay.
that's exactly what it is. And down in the AM, at 530 kilohertz.
That's why they have dots in the FMs and not the AM.
Yeah, because it's a different part of the band, and the numbers are, some of them are quite big.
Right.
And the kilohertz down in the AM band all the way up to 1600. But 1600 kilohertz, if you'll remember from your first or second chapter, 1600 kilohertz is 1.6 megahertz. But the AM people never talk about it like that. They always talk about their frequencies in kilohertz. But when you get up in FM, nobody wants to talk until you get up to 97. You don't want to talk about 97,000 kilohertz. It's just,
Like a 24-month-old baby.
yeah, exactly. 24 months or 2 years, whatever you're comfortable talking about. Okay, so anyway, do try to remember 150 hertz wide. And so 150 hertz wide, we're talking bandwidth. So that takes up, you might be transmitting at, let's say 7 megahertz. You might be transmitting at 7 megahertz, but your bandwidth of your signal line, if it's Morse code, is going 150, so what's half of 150, 75. So you're on 75 hertz on each side of that center frequency and 150 hertz altogether. This is called bandwidth. So if we were to put it onto a spectrum analyzer, here we're talking, this is the AM broadcast frequencies down here. There might be a station transmitting at 570 kilohertz down here at the bottom of the band, but it's doing more than 570 kilohertz. You know, it could be doing 576 on the one side and 564 on the other side. And as you tune through a band, you might hit that station down here at this end, and you know, oh, here's the station, but it's kind of fuzzy, or it's, you know, you're thinking, this is out of tune. I need to go a little bit more. Until you get right here onto the center frequency, and now it comes through loud and clear. And as you tune on through it, now it's getting fuzzy all over again. That's because you're getting less and less information here as you get to the lower point. So finally, you're in the noise area here. You know, the station just isn't transmitting anything in that area. So you get nothing but static. We'll talk about FM because that doesn't happen with FM, but it does with AM. And again, when you transmitting on HF frequencies, most of that is all AM stuff that you'll be doing in the HF area. So here, this is representing a much stronger signal than this one over here. The amplitude of that signal is much higher. Here is a carrier wave. You'll come across that, and all of a sudden, everything right there is quiet. And then you tune on past it, and you're back into the noise. Here, this one over here is representing a signal, a carrier wave, modulated though in this case, transmitting at 1,000 kilohertz. Partial reception over here on either side, but right in the center is where you hear it the best. And then finally you're going up the band, and you get to another weak signal at 1,310 kilohertz. Composite signals. This is the process of adding information to an unmodulated radio wave that creates additional signals called sidebands. The sidebands and the carrier work together to carry the information. Combination of carrier and sandbands creates a composite signal. So back here, these are all composite signals. There's a carrier wave. There's a sideband over here on this side of that carrier wave. There's a different sideband over here on the other side of that carrier wave. All together, that creates a really clear audio signal for you to hear. And that's what they call that, a composite signal. Here we're taking a closer look at composite signals. Sounds that make up voice are a complex mixture of multiple frequencies from 300 to 3,000 hertz. Okay, this is the range that you can hear. Your ear is capable of hearing. Two mirror image sets of sidebands are created, each up to 3,000 kilohertz wide. This is all being done in your radio. This is all what all that circuitry in there is doing. How it does that, I don't know. Now here I'm going to speak out of impolitely maybe. To me, this is FM. This is magic.
Did you just play a sound?
Did I just play a sound?
Yeah.
I did not.
Oh.
Did you hear one?
Well, I heard like a
Do you remember what frequency it was?
I don't.
3,000? Somewhere in between? But no, I did not.
Oh, okay.
All right, so AM bandwidth is 2 times 3,000 hertz, 6,000 hertz wide. That's That's a lot of bandwidth. So, I'm transmitting here at 800 kilohertz, but my sidebands, that's the part of the bell on each side of the center, goes out 3,000 kilohertz, 3,000 hertz. And put it together, that's 6,000 hertz. And again, going back to that earlier chapter, 6,000 hertz is also 6 kilohertz. So AM bandwidth can be anywhere from 3 kilohertz on each side for a total of 6 kilohertz total bandwidth all the way across. And we'll come up to why this is important in just a little bit, but I would encourage you now to also remember that an AM bandwidth is 6 kilohertz or 6,000 hertz wide. Is that okay? Are you all getting it so far?
The AM bandwidth is 6,000 hertz from start to finish, or?
Yeah, 6,000 hertz from here at 796.7 all the way up to 803. That's approximately 6 kilohertz. All right, now if we break this down a little bit more, what we're talking about is that carrier band at 800, and the bell curve over here on the left side, we call that lower sideband. The bell curve over on the right side is upper sideband. I don't know, I'm kind of thinking the way to think about it is LSB, L is for left, but don't call it the left sideband. That'll be wrong if that's on the test. It's the lower sideband. And what this is doing here, and what this last one is talking about, AM bandwidth is twice the information bandwidth. In other words, most of the information is here on the carrier wave. And this stuff over here is extraneous noise, well, not noise, but information. It is what will give your voice body when you speak over the radio. And when you do listen to AM, although everybody prefers to listen to FM, but when you do listen to AM, it's still a pleasant type of a voice, assuming that your station is within range and you're not listening to KTLA way the heck out in California and it's coming through very scratchy. But it sounds really good because you're getting the full lower sideband, upper sideband, and that carrier wave as well.
That USB and acronyms that throwing off.
It's kind of a mirror image. The carrier wave is where the central information is. Lower sideband, upper sideband is kind of a mirror image of what's coming through, but it tapers off. Two sets of voice sidebands carry duplicate information. So what you're hearing on lower sideband is what you're going to be hearing on the upper sideband. We can improve the efficiency by transmitting only one sideband. So the radio's kicking out all that power for a lower sideband, a carrier wave, and an upper sideband. It's carrying pretty much the same information. So why spend all of that energy to transmit that entire radio wave? So what the circuitry in your radio does is it eliminates one of the sidebands and the carrier wave. Now all of that power, same amount of power is is going out, but now it's being concentrated into the sideband that remains. And the sideband, as we learned earlier here, since it's 6,000 hertz wide, or 6 kilohertz wide, with only half of that signal being needed, all that power can now go into the transmission of the one sideband that you selected. 3,000 hertz for voice signals. So now your signal that you're putting out is only 3,000 hertz wide instead of 6,000 hertz wide. That makes it more efficient, that kind of makes room for other signals on the band that you're not going to be interfering with. As a radio operator in your radio, you will be able to choose, do you want to be transmitting lower sideband or do you want to be transmitting upper sideband? You pick. There'll be a switch on that radio to do that. And we're talking fancier radios, the bigger base stations. These guys, you've got no choice. Your car radio, most car radios, you have no choice.
You said it's identical information, but is there any benefit to one over the other?
No, there is not. You can do either one. We'll come up here in just a minute. There is a unwritten rule or what would you call it? No, there's oh come on, I'm having one of those senior moments here. Simple words on the tip of my tongue. Not a standard, a custom, a practice.
Tribal knowledge.
Say what?
Tribal knowledge.
Tribal knowledge, I'll go with that. And we'll hit that in just a minute. Say what?
Is that colloquialism?
No, I don't think it's quite that, but it's a practice, a common practice.
Oh, that's perfect.
Okay, so let's talk about here again. We're taking a look at the exact same thing, but we're kind of drawing different pictures. AM and sideband comparison. So here's an AM one again. There's the carrier wave, it's modulated. The modulation creates a signal 6,000 hertz wide. There's an upper sideband, a lower sideband. Here, what we've got is called double sideband. The carrier wave, the circuitry in the radio removes it. You know, I have never come across a radio where I can select double sideband. There are some ancient radios out there that do allow you to do that. I've never worked with one. But it removes the carrier wave. And is there an advantage to that? No, there is not. It's out there, so I'm telling you about it, but you're not going to ever come across it. What you are going to come across is when the radio removes one of the sidebands and the carrier wave, leaving one of the other sideband. In this case, it's the upper sideband. Now, it could just as easily, if I push that button, it's going to flip it over to lower sideband. When it does this, the fidelity of the audio goes down. It's not going to be that nice AM, when you listen to talk radio, boy, the voice sounds really good. When you go through shortwave, you'll be hearing some good audio from the professional broadcasters because they do full AM, even in the shortwave bands. But when you get to the amateur radio bands, you'll be coming across voices very understandable, especially if they're closer, they've got a stronger signal. But it just doesn't sound like you're standing next to me talking. There's clearly some kind of degradation in the voice. You might hear me, and you know me, but my voice might not sound like, is that Gary? Or, oh, thank goodness he just gave his call sign, that is Gary. You wouldn't recognize it otherwise, but you would understand everything I'm saying. single sideband use, because power efficiencies in single sideband signals, it travels further than other types of modulated modes, because more energy is being used to transmit that sideband. I would be cutting that energy in half if I was doing the other sideband as well. And a little bit more if I included the carrier wave. That energy needs to be distributed to kick all of that signal out of the radio. So by eliminating everything, it's more efficient. More power means it can travel a little bit further or be heard better at further distances. So sideband is a preferred choice for long distance communication on all bands. But we're talking mostly HF bands. Continuous wave is preferred for very poor weak signal conditions. Again, now all of that same power is going out to transmit a single tone with no sidebands. It's just a carrier wave that's being transmitted. So, and it's very narrow bandwidth. Therefore, that same amount of power doing that one little narrow signal really helps that go further. And because there is no peaks and valleys in a voice, if you hear it, even low with a lot of static, you're listening to that same tone. And you can pick that out usually pretty well, unless it's really far away or really low power. So CW is preferred for very poor weak signal conditions. Okay, now here comes back to your question. By convention, lower sideband is used below 9 megahertz. Upper sideband is everything above 10 megahertz.
So what about everything between 9 and 10 megahertz?
You don't have to worry about that because there is no ham radio band in between.
Okay,
And if there is, if there's some commercial broadcasting going on in there,
right.
use your LSB, USB button to flip-flop back and forth to get it figured out what they might be transmitting in that radio.
Okay.
But it's below 9, so anything above 9, 9.5 would probably be upper sideband.
Okay. What does DX stand for?
That's a good question. I gotta change this slide. So DX, that's ham speak for international communication.
Okay.
So if I'm talking to Canada, that's a DX contact, because Canada is not within the United States. Now I might say, and again, because I'm very partial to Guam, having married one of their girls. Guam comes under, it's a territory of the United States, like Puerto Rico and Samoa. Guam's a hell of a long distance away. In our books, Guam is a DX station. And you can hit Guam, you can get Japan, you can hit the Philippines, you can hit Taiwan, a bunch of other places. Those are all DX stations. So when you get to some of those outer territories, even though they're US stations, they're DX stations. But if you contact a station down in Key West or up in Alaska, that's not considered DX. But anything else outside the United States is DX. All right, let's talk a little bit about frequency modulation. So we all love our FM stations, although I guess with streaming and satellites and all of that, nobody's listening to AM or FM anymore. Anyway, so here you're being modulated by the compression expansion of the frequency wave, not the amplitude is not varying. The amplitude's gonna stay exactly the same. But that distance between, the tops and the bottoms of um, the wave, is going to stay the same, but between the waves is going to change. FM has excellent noise rejection qualities. This is why we like listening to FM, because there's no static. The lightning crashes, particularly in the summertime, will get interfering with your AM reception. You don't get that with frequency modulation. The thing with frequency modulation, though, the bandwidth for voice is between 5 and 15 kilohertz wide. That's a lot bigger than the 6 kilohertz on the AM signal, and that one much bigger than the 150 hertz on Morse code. FM is used on most UHF, VHF repeaters, and that's quite true, including right here. Around here, I'm understanding you guys get the Gloucester repeater pretty good. That is using FM, as is all of the Williamsburg repeaters. Packet radio, something we'll talk about in a little bit, uses FM audio tones. And when you hear a packet radio signal, you're just hearing doody, blah, blah, blah type of thing. There's no voice data on it, it's all data off and on signals. But it uses FM to transmit that.
What about satellite radio?
Satellite radio comes down on, I'm gonna say FM, because you don't hear any static. You know, when it's in view line of sight, you're getting a signal. If it goes over the horizon, you're not hearing anything, although the commercial broadcast satellites are in a stationary orbit overhead, so you're always going to hear them, but they're transmitting down on FM. Okay, quick review here. Here I got a carrier wave, I'm modulating it with an audio tone, and I get something like this. This is AM modulation. Same carrier wave. I add a modulated signal to it, although in this case, well, this case too, but this case it's a steady sine wave. Here's how it looks in the FM modulated style. Down in the peaks up here, compressed, but in the valleys where there's very little information, it widens out the wavelength. Okay, now a little bit about phase modulation. So don't lose your minds over this. There might be one question or two on the test, but it's not going to break the bank. We can also shift the signal's phase back and forth. So if I can transmit a signal, it starts here, and we're measuring in time. By the time it gets to what we call 90 degrees, I don't know how much time that is. We're talking fractions of a second. But after a certain amount of time, we're at the peak. 90 degrees later, whatever time that is, we're at 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and then back to 360 degrees, and we start all over again. So that's what we're talking about, a single phase. With amplitude, well, when we do the phase modulation, the radio will also kind of split the signal up and delay a part of it. And so it will be 90 degrees, a quarter wave out of cycle, if it delays that transmitting of the other signal. Or if we delay it by half a cycle, it looks a little bit like this. So this is called phase modulation. very similar to FM, but FM, it's all single phase. Phase is a position within a cycle or a relative position between two waves, and it's useful for data modes like something called PSK31. That's a really old modular, digital mode. It's not used much anymore. It still is, but I mean, it's not used, I would never transmit it in PSK31. But it might be on the test. And if it helps, PSK stands for phase shift key. And 31, I think that was quad. Computer speak there. 31 quad. So again, if we compare these things, amplitude modulation, here's the signal with our information on it, here's the carrier wave, here's the modulated result of adding these things together. So we've done this one, but over here in digital modulation, you take the off-on signal, add it, and now it looks like this. So that's why this is very similar to FM. Typical, what time are we at here? We should,
7 minutes till.
let's take a break here.